Hey, Lighthouse. Well, let's continue with Daniel, and we're getting to the end of Daniel 6, and really Daniel is two books. It's one work for sure, and yet it is going to take a turn and be apocalyptic prophecy, starting in chapter 7, and we're not going to go as slowly as we've been going. In fact, we might just take one day of devotions and look at the whole rest of the book of Daniel, or we might go chapter by chapter, a couple chapters at a time. I'm more interested in devotionally praising God with you for 10 minutes in the morning, and devotionally like receiving what God has for us today, rather than kind of picking apart all of the interpretations of the second half of Daniel. Having said that, the first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel are set up so you will believe the rest of the book of Daniel. We are supposed to see the integrity of Daniel go through the book. We are supposed to see the superiority of Yahweh, not just to the Babylonian gods, but then all the way in the future, that whether it's the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, or the prophecies that are going to come in the chapters to follow. The big idea in the book of Daniel is, hey, exiles, you serve the living God. And he is not only the God here in Babylon, but he is the God of the whole earth and will always be. Kingdoms will rise and kingdoms will fall. And it will seem like there are men who have conquered the whole earth. And yet, not only is God the actual ruler, but there is a Messiah coming. This stone that starts, not cut by human hands, but the stone that starts out of the cliff and grows to fill the whole earth. This is Jesus and his kingdom. So when we get to the New Testament and what you hear is the kingdom of God is at hand, you're thinking, oh, this is what Daniel was talking about. When we read the book of Revelation, and so much of it is allusion to Daniel, we say, Daniel was onto something. And the thing that Daniel was onto was the absolute superiority of God among lesser gods. Even though they seem powerful for a time, even though Nebuchadnezzar seemed like the king of the world, even though Darius seems like the king of the world, no, it is God who is the king of the world. So, having said all that, the last little chunk here in chapter 6 is a wonderful, last song of the first act of the book. It is a wonderful summary statement for all of that stuff. Remember, Daniel has been thrown into the lion's den because he's prayed to God instead of to Darius. Darius got tricked into throwing Daniel in the lion's den and to signing his execution. Darius has been up all night fasting, hoping that Daniel's God would save him. And then in verse 19, at the break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" So this has been something that has happened with 3 kings in a row. This has been one of the points of the book, is that when the guy who claims to be the king comes in contact with the living God, he is humbled. He has been like the one who has said, hey, everybody should pray to me and not pray to anybody else. But now he's yelling in the lion's den going, Daniel, I really hope Yahweh was able to save you from me. Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angels and shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, as I have done no harm." So again, another one of the themes of the book is just Daniel's faithfulness, that Daniel doesn't give in to the temptation to follow the Babylonian gods, now the gods of the Medes and the Persians. nor does he give in to the temptation to lead a violent revolution. Rather, he continues to just be a man of God living in a culture that does not serve God, and it is his integrity that saves him. Is that not good for us to hear? The thing that saves Daniel is his integrity. And we're tempted to say, oh, this story's not realistic, so I guess if you serve God, God will always save you from the mouths of the lions and everything will always work out. Well, that's not the story in Daniel. Daniel's been kidnapped. He's grown up his whole life as an exile in Babylon. He's seen a king that he served murdered. He's seen another one ousted. Now he's been tricked by the other officials at his layer of the government. No, Daniel's story is not that Daniel's life always goes well, but it is that his integrity, his continual insistence on leaning on God and not on anything else, is what saves him. That's good for us to hear. That would be good for us to live out. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him. Of course, we're thinking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and their unsinged clothes, and we see this pattern of the prominence of God, the ability that God has to save his people from these evil monarchs. So David was brought and cast into the lion's den. So then the people who accused Daniel are brought and cast into the lion's den, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones into pieces. So much for the lions just weren't hungry, or these were toothless lions, or any of the themes. You can't have that. No, this is clearly something that God did. God shut the mouths of these lions. And so while it is Daniel's integrity that saves him, it is the conniving, underhanded lack of integrity of these other people that is their undoing. Then Darius wrote to all the peoples of the nations and languages that dwell on the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. You remember, what got us into this mess is if the king says an ordinance, it cannot be undone. Well, he's using that same power that he used to his demise. Now he's using it to the glory of God. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So all of the big ideas in the first half of the book of Daniel are there. God's superiority. God is not just the God in Israel. God is the God even in Babylon. The importance of integrity in God's people, that we don't give in to idolatry, but we also don't give in to rebellion. Instead, we live solid lives of integrity, and also God's ability to not only defend, but have vengeance for his people. That God not only saves Daniel from Nebuchadnezzar and from Darius, but he turns their hearts. Their hearts go from feeling like they are the real power in the universe to knowing that God is the real power in the universe. Man, I hope that this has been an enjoyable time in the book of Daniel to you, and I hope that you've grown in these simple and repetitive themes. That it might look like other powers are in charge, but they're not. It is God who is in charge of your life and of the universe. And that our proper behavior, if we are in the middle of a kingdom that does not honor God, is simply to refuse the king's food, to refuse to bow to the statue, to refuse to stop praying no matter what the rules are, but to continue living faithful lives before God and letting him be our defender. All right, Lighthouse, be loved.